My name is Abhinav, and I am a software developer by role. And currently, I'm working as a mobile developer. And during my entire career, I have been part of Java development, mobile development, and I'm very passionate about learning new things and tools and technologies. So today's topic is about the design pattern. So design pattern is, as you know, it's a very very integral part of any type of development that you do. So it is, I'm not going into the the why we do the design pattern, who brought this and all those, I assume and I'll keep my topic short and uh, to the point. So I'll be talking about, there are actually 23 design patterns, right? By Goff. So there are creational design patterns, structural design patterns, and behavioral design patterns. All these design patterns have a specific roles and responsibility while you write your code. So once when you create a big projects or any ERP based projects, or like a build ecosystem of multi-layer architecture project, like suppose you have a backend in Java, Oracle, you have a middle tier with the RESTful APIs, and you have a front end like desktop application, mobile applications. So these are in these this type of architecture comes under the multi-layer architecture for any application. So there basically um, design, thinking a good design pattern comes becomes really difficult and very required, because you have to follow some sort of design pattern. Otherwise you will end up writing wrong code and bloated code or buggy code. So design pattern helps you to avoid those kind of problems, right? So so I'll be talking about the chain of responsibility design pattern, which is the first design pattern of the behavioral design pattern. So yeah, so let me take you to um, my blog, where basically I have mentioned all type of design patterns. What is the design pattern, why basically you need to go for choose the chain of responsibility design pattern. So in our daily development life cycle, we face a situation where decoupling the sender and receiver objects often becomes difficult in our applications, because the whole idea behind is like, we as a software developer, you need to follow some basic protocols like code of separation of concern, which is a very important to distinguish, make your code loose coupling and distinguish between your sender and receiver. And I know if you are a mobile developer, suppose you have multiple screens and you need to send objects from one screen to another, and you need to distinguish um, between those, and you want to do some loose coupling and all. So for those type of task, you can think of a chain of responsibility design pattern. So why would you choose the chain of responsibility pattern? Because they decouple the sender and the receiver objects in your application. So suppose we want to pass a request to receiving object without knowing who the sender was, and the same can be applied, right, vice versa. So the sender should have to know who the receiver was in order to process that request. So let me give you a very simple example. So suppose in a company, we usually have the hierarchy, right? We have a hierarchy of maybe the CEO, VP, director, team leads, and all, right? So everybody have a specific responsibility, and if you consider all of them together, they have a chain of responsibility. So team lead can approve, suppose if your team lead, if you want to purchase something, so team lead can approve, suppose price of $1,000, and beyond that, team lead needs to go to ask the director. Director can approve, maybe suppose $2,000. Beyond that, he need to again go to just giving you a thought for food. So these are basically the responsibilities that has been shared among each of them. So think of this as a concept, like to to bifurcate this type of problem, to resolve this type of problem, you need to think of chain of responsibility design pattern. Here chain of responsibility design pattern can be a good fit for it. Okay, so let me talk you through the UML. So this is the UML diagram of any chain of responsibility design pattern. So you can see there is client, this is the handler, which is, it has the responsibility of handling the request, like, right, it doesn't bother who sends the request. He will only his job is only to handle those requests. And there is a concrete handler one, and there is concrete handler two. They also have to, once this handler sends the request, someone has to process that request and give the result back, right? So there can be a team lead class, there can be a VP class, there can be CEO class, right? Those are what, those are basically a concrete implementation, concrete handlers, you can say. So let me just take you to my code here. I'll give you a very I'll give you two examples here. One example related to, like, in our Java framework, we basically daily use chain of responsibility design pattern without knowing it. Like, okay, this is what it does. So here you can see a very short example. I have basically, what I'm doing is basically I've created a logger, right? And inside my main method, you can see I have set a label which is finer. I can it There can be many labels like this. So suppose if I set label dot, see here, you can see finer, fine, class, all, config, finest, on, off. Many things are there. Warning, lot of things are there, right? So you can basically filter it out which one you want to use. So I want to just use the console handler. I just want to print my log to the console. For that, I want to add some like on top of that, I'll add the I want to see the finer label only, right? So I'm basically, what I'm doing, I have created a console handler. So what is console handler? Console handle is basically publish log records to the system by default. If you can see here, it is, this is the description that it is showing it, like, so by default, each console handler is initialized using the following log manager configuring properties where this. So what I mean to say here is, like, you can define your chain of responsibilities here, right? Like I have created a console handler, and I told my handler, like, please set this log the finer. I just wanted to see the finer only. So inside my logger, I have added three types of logs, which is fine, finer, finest. So since I have used only the finer, you will see when I run this, you will see the finer and the finer has been printed. um, I can easily just run it again. I'm using the IntelliJ ID. So yeah, Here it is finished. So you can see here, right? The the finer, finer, right? So it didn't print this finest one. Why? Because there is no because there is no one to handle that log. So basically, the chain of responsibility is basically works like this way, right? So the design of the chain of responsibility has a chain of receiver objects. So definitely there would be chain of receivers object. This can be implemented in number of ways, but some basic form of list is typically the most common. Each handler is based off the main interface that defines the contract between the each chain link. There is a concrete handler for each receiver implementation that will basically interpret a request. So so this is what I wanted to mean here. So the piece of the UML diagram, the handle concrete, the handler, or then successor. So for every request, there must be, someone to handle those requests. So let me give you a real time example that I've created. This is my main class, and think of a company where uh, there is a director, there is VP, there is CEO, and director can set the, you know uh, director can go to VP, or VP can go to director, their ancestor. Like think of an ancestor. So VP set the successor CEO. Now VP, see, director can go to VP, VP can go to CEO, right? Because CEO has there is no one else as of now. So CEO can do anything he wants. So these are the basically what chain of request. And the I set the chain of request and handle the request. Basically what I did is, like you can see here, I can request a purchase. So what I'm doing here is, like, a director, suppose, like I mentioned earlier also, suppose you want to purchase something. So your director can approve $500 amount price only if you want to purchase something. Beyond that he will not do that. If there is something like $1,000, for that director needs to go to VP. It will go to director first, but since director doesn't have that authority, right, to do that, so it will go to VP. So and then there is 2,000, right? So beyond 1,000, let's suppose, beyond $1,000 the VP can't do anything. It needs to go to again to the CEO. So from VP to CEO, basically what this is, a chain of request which is keep coming. So for this you need to create some concrete classes. Concrete classes are like director class, VP class, CEO class. So let's check out the director class first. So for the time being, just ignore this extends handler. I'll talk on this. So see, my director class is very simple. It is basically handling my requests which are coming to me, and I'm checking which type of request it is coming. It is a request of conference type or purchase type. So suppose, let's make it more meaningful. So suppose you have two type of request. One is conference, one is purchase. So conference can be approved by the director, but it cannot approved by the other two. Purchase can be approved by the, say suppose VP, but VP can only approve $1,000 only, but beyond $1,000 he cannot approve. CEO can do anything, right? He is the boss. So you can bifurcate between these two types, conference type, purchase type, and you can handle those separately. So let's first check the request. How basically I'm creating a request. So nothing in my request class, if you can see, I have a request type. And so let's jump to the request type. The request type, I like enums, basically that's why I have added it here. separately. So request type is basically conference and purchase. You can keep adding whatever you want, but just to make it more senseful, I have done this conference and purchase I'm using right now. So request type. Now come to the request class. So here if you see, I have just created initialize request type and the amount, and I've created a constructor of it, pass the value in the set the constructor here, and I have just, if you can see, I have created a getter methods of the request type and the amounts here, right? So this is what I'm doing for the request type and the request. Now let's move to my handler class. So my handler class is basically an abstract class which will basically handle what it will handle. It will handle the successor. Think of successor. So handler is basically unit. I'm just basically what I'm doing. I've created a method called set successor, and there is a handle request. So based on the request type, I can handle this request. So this is my handle class. Now come to any type of concrete class. Let's move to the director class again. Yeah, here. So my director class is basically extending the handler class, and once you extend that handler class, then there is I have a abstract method here which is handle request. You need to implement that method. So I have just overridden that method here. I'm just checking what type. So like I mentioned, director can approve only the purchase related to conference. So I'm checking, okay, this is a conference type, and so I'm just printing it out. So director can approve conference, and if it is suppose if request so once if sender sends multiple request, so as a chain of responsibility it will come to the director also, but director will check, okay, this is not my type. So if suppose it is a purchase, it is not my type, then it will go to the else, and successor will handle the request. Who will handle the request? Now it will take to the other ancestor like you defined here. So here I have defined like director, I have set the successor VP and then CEO. So accordingly it will move, right? Director, VP, and then CEO. So it will go to VP. Now VP, the request will come to VP, and VP will see, okay, it is a request type of purchase. And what about the amount? If the amount is, suppose I'm sending 500 here, so okay, he will check, okay, the amount should be less than 1500. It is currently it is 500. I'm passing, so it is less than 1500, so it will, okay, I can purchase the amount below. If suppose I am sending 2000 here, so again if I send 2000 here, then VP will not be the suitable person to approve it. So it will go to the next successor. Who is the next successor? The next successor is CEO. So now let's go to the CEO class. Okay, so once it will come to the CEO class, CEO, like I mentioned, he can do anything. So he will just approve this and it will done. So in very short, this is the chain of responsibility, and this is how you can implement it. So think of like if you have some hierarchical structure, and you wanted to do something like in a hierarchy, whether um, after, and you can see here, like the sender and the receiver are very loosely coupled. They don't know what type of requests are coming, right? Because because uh, everyone who is the receiver, basically the CEO is the receiver here, right? The director is the receiver here. Based on his purpose, he will handle the request. Otherwise he will let go to other person who can next in the hierarchy, and he will handle the request. So that's how the chain of responsibility design pattern works. Let me run this demo to show you. Okay, now see, director can approve conference, VP can approve purchase bill of 1500, CEO can approve anything. Why? Because I have sent 500 requests, so director um, approve the conference type. So that's why it's saying this, and then 1000, 2000. So yeah, you. I just wanted to make my point here. Like, if you can come across this type of scenario and you want to make your code loosely coupled in your project, and so you can follow this chain of responsibility behavioral design pattern, but it has also pitfalls. That is why um, the other design patterns come into the picture, but I'll not talk about in this slide. I'll just dedicate this video is dedicated for the chain of responsibility. So that's it from my side. Thank you for watching the video.